The young and the restless spoilers in the heart of Genoa City, where loyalties shift as swiftly as the autumn winds and alliances can crumble at the lightest provocation. The simmering feud between Audra Charles and Claire Newman has reached a fever pitch. What began as whispered insults and subtextual barbs at charity luncheons has escalated into a full-scale public war, played out against the backdrop of billboards, high-stakes business negotiations, and the gilded hallways of Chancellor Williams. Claire, firm in her conviction that no interloper should sully the delicate balance of her world, has made it her mission to bar Audra from Kyle's life at every turn. She wields her inheritance, her reputation, and the implicit threat of legal action like a seasoned attorney, determined to fortify her claim to Kyle's affection and partnership in a way that leaves Audra reeling at every new setback. Audra, by contrast, has seized upon her partnership, both professional and personal, to bulldoze through Claire's defenses. Armed with a blend of corporate savvy honed during her rise through the cutthroat corridors of finance and a stubborn streak inherited from an absent mother, Audra refuses to yield. Every time Claire arranges a board meeting to freeze Audra out of Jabot's expansion plan, Audra counters by leveraging contacts in Los Angeles, securing a rival deal that exposes Claire's vulnerabilities and forces her onto the defensive. When Claire hosts an exclusive gala at the Newman Ranch, Audra ensures her entrance is the talk of the evening, arriving in a head-turning red gown, arms draped in vintage Cartier, delivering a speech that simultaneously salutes Kyle's business acumen and casts doubt upon Claire's capacity to share power. The battle lines have thus been drawn in the public eye, each skirmish a carefully orchestrated spectacle of PR warfare. Newspaper headlines spin tales of Newman versus Charles as though the feud were a soap opera subplot, when in fact it is all too real. Audra's Instagram showcases her philanthropic endeavors and glamorous lifestyle. Claire's press releases tout her charitable foundation and her elegant stewardship of Newman Enterprises. In private, however, the tension is far more visceral. Audra's nights are haunted by vivid dreams of Claire's steely gaze. Claire, meanwhile, drifts off clutching the image of Audra's triumphant smile as she signs yet another deal without her permission. Yet this bruising war is about to meet an unexpected turning point, for a mysterious figure has surfaced on the edge of this battleground, Audra's mother, Helena Charles. No one in Genoa City had anticipated her arrival, least of all Audra herself. Rumor had swirled for years about Helena's existence. The enigmatic CEO of a multi-million-dollar tech conglomerate in Los Angeles who built her empire from scratch, silently observing her daughter's tumultuous pursuit of success from thousands of miles away. Audra, ever the independent spirit, saw her mother's absence as proof that she must carve her own path. And so she fled LA, leaving behind a mother who was both too proud to coddle and too distant to counsel. Now, Helena has descended upon Genoa City with intent written across her impeccably tailored features. Her arrival, announced first by hush-hush phone calls to board members and then confirmed by a late-night headline in the Genoa City Tribune, has thrown Claire and Audra alike into a state of stunned curiosity. Claire wonders if Helena's presence will be a boon to her lawsuit strategy, perhaps swaying Audra's loyalties or exposing vulnerabilities in her business conduct. Audra, who has always maintained that her mother's absence was a burden she bore alone, must now confront a torrent of emotions, anger, betrayal, longing, and an uncomfortable suspicion that the woman who gave her life may now decide how she spends it. Helena Charles wastes no time in making her presence felt. She schedules meetings at Victoria Newman's private estate, where whispers of a potential truce between Newman and Charles' interests begin to circulate. She attends an intimate breakfast at Society Row, where the city's elite gather to speculate on her motives. And, most dramatically, she arrives unannounced at Kyle and Audra's shared office, her heels clicking ominously before Audra can turn to face her. Their reunion is electric. Audra's composure falters for the first time in months, revealing a raw vulnerability in the daughter who always prided herself on unflappable poise. Helena's expression, however, remains inscrutable. There is disappointment in her eyes, yes, but also a gleam of something darker, an ambition that mirrors Audra's own. Claire watches this dynamic unfold with a calculated precision. Behind her calm, she knows that Helena's arrival could sever the tenuous alliance Audra has forged with Kyle. If mother and daughter reconcile, or if Helena's business acumen eclipses Audra's efforts, Claire might find herself sidelined not just socially but in the boardroom. She begins to recalibrate her strategy, reaching out to Victor Newman for support, hoping her patriarchal ally will tip the scales in her favor. Meanwhile, Audra finds herself torn between defending her hard-earned autonomy and hedging her bets by aligning with the mother she resents. Kyle, caught between the two formidable women he cares about, grows increasingly uneasy as the board votes loom ever closer. In the weeks that follow, power plays intensify. Helena extends an olive branch by proposing a joint venture with Newman Enterprises, an unprecedented alliance that could redefine the landscape of Genoa City's corporate hierarchy. Audra bristles at the thought of her mother dictating terms, yet she recognizes that the magnitude of this offer cannot be ignored. Claire, sensing an opportunity, offers to mediate the merger under her own conditions, insisting that any agreement preserve her veto power over corporate decisions. The stage is set for a showdown in the boardroom that will determine not only the fates of Audra and Claire but the very future of the companies they represent. As the decisive vote approaches, alliances shift like sand. Audra confesses to Kyle in a rare moment of candor that she fears becoming a pawn in her mother's grand design. Claire, overhearing snippets of their conversation, resolves to exploit Audra's inner turmoil by planting doubts about Helena's long-term intentions. And Helena, ever the strategist, unveils a detailed vision for the merged companies, one that promises innovation and stability but requires Audra to relinquish a significant portion of her equity. In a tense board meeting, speeches are made, objections raised, and tempers flare. The final tally seems destined to be deadlocked until Audra, summoning every ounce of resolve she has cultivated over years of struggle, casts her vote in favor. Ushering in a new era for Genoa City's power structure, but also sealing her own fate as both daughter and partner within her mother's empire. In the aftermath, Claire stands alone in the cavernous boardroom, surveying the ripple effects of Audra's decision. The victory she once imagined is now out of reach, yet she finds solace in the fact that her rivalry has been tempered by a respect she never expected to feel for Audra's tenacity. Audra, for her part, emerges from the meeting transformed. Bound to her mother in ways she never anticipated, yet emboldened by her choice to embrace both her heritage and her self-made success. Helena, observing the interplay between ambition and loyalty, knows that the true work is only beginning, forging a partnership that honors their familial bond while navigating the treacherous currents of corporate politics. Thus, the battle between Audra Charles and Claire Newman reaches its denouement not with a final blow but with a mutual recognition of each other's strength. In a city built on shifting allegiances and hidden motives, they have each discovered that true power lies not in isolation but in the delicate balance between partnership and autonomy, a lesson that will reverberate through Genoa City long after the final gavel has fallen. In the gilded corridors of power and privilege that define Genoa City, the rivalry between Audra Charles and Claire Newman had long since transcended mere professional competition. It had become a battle of wills, a public spectacle that held the city's elite and its tabloid press in thrall. When Audra first arrived in town, she carried with her only a suitcase of designer clothes and an indomitable ambition. Claire, by contrast, was already ensconced in her family's legacy, secure in the knowledge that Newman Enterprises and Jabot Cosmetics were names to be reckoned with. Their initial clashes, over boardroom alliances, corporate sponsorships, and even the affections of Kyle Abbott, had escalated rapidly from whispered rumors at charity luncheons to full-scale PR warfare, each side aggressively courting public sympathy while ruthlessly undermining the other's reputation. From the moment Audra secured her partnership in Newman Chancellor Ventures, Claire saw her as an interloper, someone unworthy of her place beside Kyle. Claire used every tool at her disposal, late-night cease and desist letters accusing Audra of breach of contract, behind-the-scenes phone calls to key investors warning them of Audra's unreliable background, and carefully leaked photos of Audra in compromising social situations. Audra, for her part, countered with a strategic genius born of years navigating LA's cutthroat startup scene. She tapped into her mother's old network of financiers, despite their frosty personal history, and secured a rival funding round that left Newman Enterprises momentarily scrambling to match her capital infusion. Publicly, she spoke of her vision for innovation and inclusion. Privately, she reveled in every advantage her maneuver inflicted upon Claire. Yet, as fierce as their rivalry was, neither Audra nor Claire could have anticipated the arrival of Helena Charles, Audra's mother, a formidable business magnate whose very name commanded respect in Los Angeles boardrooms. Helena had watched her daughter's exploits from afar, her pride tempered by disappointment at Audra's unilateral flight from home. When news of Audra's campaign of disruption in Genoa City reached her, Helena dispatched a private jet and arrived unannounced, her presence radiating the sort of controlled power that only decades of corporate conquest can instill. The tabloids, ever hungry for fresh scandal, seized upon Helena's appearance as the turning point in the Newman-Charles conflict, speculating endlessly on whether a mother's love would melt into alliance or explode into yet another vendetta. Audra's reaction to her mother's arrival was visceral. She who had never flinched in the face of hostile board votes now recoiled as though struck. Within hours of Helena's touchdown, Audra found herself cornered in the polished marble foyer of the Chancellor Williams Building. Helena's voice, calm, cold, and precise, echoed through the atrium. "You have 2 days to return to Los Angeles," she said, as though issuing a corporate deadline, "or I will send someone to bring you back by force." Then, in a moment that stunned onlookers, she raised her hand and slapped Audra so sharply that the daughter's designer gown rippled with the impact. That slap was more than a physical blow, it was the distillation of years of tension between a mother who governed by control and a daughter who prized her hard-won independence above all else. Audra, her cheek burning, her heart pounding, stood frozen for a heartbeat before her defenses rose once more. She had endured this intimidating ultimatum before, childhood visits in which Helena berated her for every misstep, every failure to meet impossible standards. Each time, Audra had run, first to school, then to jobs, then ultimately to Genoa City, seeking a place where she could define herself on her own terms. Now, however, the stakes were higher than ever. If she returned to LA, she risked losing the autonomy she had fought so hard to establish in Genoa City. And, by extension, the legitimacy she had garnered as a partner in major corporate ventures. If she stayed, she risked provoking her mother's wrath and exposing herself to whatever covert measures Helena might deploy. Her thought turned immediately to Victor Newman, the patriarch whose influence often tipped power struggles in Claire's favor. Audra, who until this moment had scorned the idea of hiding behind anyone, least of all an outsider like Victor, now contemplated reaching out to him as a shield. Victor, ever the strategist, might see Helena's appearance as an opportunity to expand his own empire through an alliance with the Charles fortune, or he might provide Audra with the protection she needed to defy her mother. Late that night, Audra sat alone in her high-rise apartment, the twinkling city lights mocking her indecision. Memories of Helena's flawless boardroom presentations flashed through her mind. The commanding presence, the icy resolve that had built a multi-million-dollar company from scratch. Audra's pulse raced as she replayed their confrontation. The slap still stung, the ultimatum still echoed. And yet beneath her fear flickered a familiar ember of defiance. She had survived everything her mother had thrown at her before: abandonment, criticism, disdain, and she knew that running away again would only reinforce Helena's conviction that Audra was incapable of standing on her own. Morning brought another summons. Helena had arranged a breakfast meeting, not at a private estate, not in a neon-lit hotel suite, but in the very offices of Newman Chancellor Ventures. Claire, tipped off by her sources in Victor's inner circle, arrived early to survey the scene, her expression a mask of polite neutrality. Victor himself appeared, leaning casually against the doorframe, his curiosity piqued. Helena rose to greet him with a nod, no warmth, but unmistakable respect. And for the first time, Audra saw a glimpse of the power she herself might wield if she could only harness her mother's brilliance without succumbing to her domineering methods. Helena outlined her terms with clinical precision. Audra would return to LA to assume co-leadership of Charles' innovations within 2 days. In exchange, Helena would invest heavily in the joint venture she was proposing with Newman Enterprises, promising Claire a seat at the table if she agreed to the merger. At stake was not only Audra's future but the very structure of corporate power in Genoa City. Claire's jaw tightened as she weighed the offer, an alliance that could cement her family's dominance, yet one that hinged on Audra's submission to Helena's demands. Victor, meanwhile, steepled his fingers and observed, his allegiance as fluid as ever, ready to side with whichever party promised him the greatest advantage. As the meeting adjourned, Audra felt the walls closing in. She caught Claire's eye and saw there a mixture of triumph and apprehension. Claire, no doubt, anticipated that Audra would capitulate, and that she would then become vulnerable to a double cross by Helena or Victor. Audra, however, was already forging her response. She would not flee. She would not kneel. Instead, she resolved to challenge Helena on her own terms, to demonstrate that her worth was not a function of her mother's approval, but of her own integrity, vision, and unrelenting drive. With 2 days on the clock, Audra drafted a letter, succinct, fearless, and unapologetic, declaring her intention to remain in Genoa City and to continue building her life on her own terms. She planned to deliver it personally, in Helena's presence, and to face whatever consequences followed. She would lean on Victor's influence if she had to, but she would speak for herself, not as a frightened daughter begging for mercy, but as an equal demanding to be heard. Thus, in the crucible of that tense boardroom, a new chapter in Audra's saga was about to unfold. No longer would she be the ingenue fleeing her past, no longer would she be the wounded daughter hiding in the shadows. She would stand, unbowed, ready to defy a mother who had once been her greatest protector and her fiercest critic alike. And as the city held its breath, the feud between Audra Charles and Claire Newman, once defined by corporate skirmishes and social posturing, was poised to transform into a testament of personal courage, a battle not merely for power, but for identity. In Genoa City, where alliances shift and loyalties fracture with breathtaking speed, Audra's decision to stay would echo through the marble halls and glass towers long after her mother's private jet had vanished into the dawn sky.